Hello, friends and fellow musicians. I've got something very special for you today. You're going to see my interview with David Steinquest. A while back, I was tasked with doing a school project where I had to interview a faculty member at a school of music. But I wasn't restricted to just the University of Memphis. I could interview any faculty member from any school. So I decided, seeing as how fall break was approaching, that I was going to interview my very first private instructor, David Steinquest, the professor of percussion at Austin Peay State University. We were only supposed to talk for about 30 minutes. We ended up talking for almost 90. So I've been sitting on this footage for a while, and I've been thinking about making a video out of it, and today I finally found the motivation to start doing so. So I just wanted to make this and really show this admiration for the guy who, I can't stress enough, is the reason that I make music today. So let the interview begin, and I can't think of a clever transition, so... All right, thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Sure.
Thank you for taking your time out of your fall break to do this with me. Okay, so let's get started. What is your current job? What do you do, and how long have you been there? When did you start?
Yeah. So I'm the professor of percussion at Austin Peay State University, which is in Clarksville, Tennessee. I came to this job in 1985, was actually the first full-time percussion teacher that they had ever had at Austin Peay. It had always been an adjunct person before my position. When I got here, it wasn't just incredibly small. I would say maybe we had 8 or 10 percussion majors at that point. Which meant I had to do a few other things to fill out a load. Of course, I did percussion ensemble, but I also started out teaching in the freshman theory classes. Things got smaller before they got bigger, but I ended up starting the jazz combo at Austin Peay. They had had a big band, but they hadn't had a small group. And it seemed to me like, especially some of the better players needed a group that they could work more on improvisation. So we started that class. And I've got enough students now that I've had to give that up. And all I'm doing is I'm teaching private lessons and the percussion ensemble. I have done the percussion group instruction. Most of the time I've had to actually pass that off at the moment because we've got more students than I can handle. So that's the job.
Okay. What led you to work in Clarksville at Austin Peay, and why have you stayed there for all the decades you've been there?
Yeah, that's always a funny question. When people ask it, I mean, I know that you understand the situation, but generally people don't understand that you have to go wherever the job might actually be. Mm-hmm. So there were, early on when I was interviewing, sending out resumes, trying to get a job teaching at the collegiate level, where I might have something that I'm shooting for that's on the West Coast and one on the East Coast and one way up in the upper Midwest and something in the Deep South. It's like you can't exactly pick where you want to go, or at least most of us can't. Mm-hmm. You just go where the job is. So at the point that I got this job, I had been in the West Point band and had been there for 3 years.
Where's West Point?
In New York, just outside of New York City.
Okay.
West Point is actually I guess it's considered, like a town. I did not want to stay in the Army, so I started looking at openings, and it just happened that Austin Peay was one of those. It was a little odd that my dad had taught at Tennessee Tech from the late 50s into the middle 60s. So I did my initial growing up in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So that was, something that was appealing to me. The other thing is there were still a number of people on the faculty who especially knew my dad from things like All-State, different sorts of things where teachers from different universities would be in the same place at the same time. So there were probably 6 or so of the faculty members that were still at Austin Peay that knew my dad when he was at Tennessee Tech. And some of them knew me really only as a little rugrat running around my dad. So that was also kind of funny. And in a way, it was comforting that it was almost like I knew some people when I came here instead of it being just a, completely a move to somewhere with no one that I knew.
Yeah.
You go through the process, send in an initial paperwork and stuff. At that point, that was really all you did. Resume and cover letter, that sort of thing. And then the next step would be sending in some sort of recording. At that time, of course, it was just audio. And I don't even know if I sent cassette. It could have been reel to reel at that moment.
Recorded on an 8-track.
Yeah. But anyway, then they sort of whittle that down to whoever they have come in and do in-person interviews. And I got lucky enough that I got the job. So as soon as I got out of the Army, I came straight to Clarksville.
Yeah. So you've been there for how long is that? Since 1985?
This is like 38 that 38. I'm working on.
So you've been there a while. Why have you stayed there all these years? Has there ever been a point where you were like, I could be somewhere else?
Yeah. I have always said, well, first of all, Clarksville is a nice town. Austin Peay, there are a number of other really good faculty that I've been able to be around. I like working with students who need me, and a lot of the students that we have at Austin Peay maybe didn't have the greatest high school situation, or had never taken private lessons or whatever, and so they're kind of starting not exactly where most people would think a college freshman in majoring in music should be, which doesn't mean that those people can't do it. They just haven't had the opportunity to try to do that. And the other thing too, and this is really a big thing, we're 45 minutes out of Nashville, and I've got a number of different things that keep me busy in Nashville. So one of those things that I have said is I could be at a bigger, better school in a much worse location. So I've just been content to do what I do right here.
Yeah. You hinted at this a little bit, but where are you originally from? Where did you go to school to learn music, and how did those schools influence you and help you to get where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Tennessee at first. I started taking piano when I was 5. Started taking some drum lessons when I was about 10. At that point, it was just snare drum stuff, no mallet playing at all. Then we moved to Louisiana. And
where in Louisiana?
Monroe.
Okay.
My dad, again, had taught at Tennessee Tech and got the job at Northeast Louisiana University. And there was a teacher there, Stanley Fink, that I started taking lessons from. And he was a really, really excellent teacher. So as a result of that, I decided that I didn't really want to go anywhere else for undergrad school. I just stayed home. The weird thing there, I had my dad for most of my music theory classes because he was one of the primary music theory teachers. But that was a good situation. We we worked well together. He was a really great teacher. And as it turns out, I ended up being my son's teacher at Austin Peay. My son Benjamin majored in music as a percussionist. So I had him in lessons and percussion ensemble, and I was still doing the jazz combo, so he was playing in the jazz combo. So I think he had me for more classes than anybody else that he did. And that one also worked out really well. We got along well, and it was a good working relationship. So anyway, I did my undergrad at Northeast, and then did my master's degree at University of Michigan with Charlie Owen was still teaching there at that time. It was tremendous. Don Liuzzi, who's the timpanist in Philadelphia, was one of the other percussionists at that time. We got to be really good friends. It was a moment where they didn't have as many percussionists as they were supposed to have. Most of the big schools, the numbers don't go up and down like they might at a smaller school sometimes. But this was just a sort of an oddity right at this point. I think a couple of people got jobs that they weren't expecting, and there wasn't time to try to grab some other student to fill that slot. As a result, those of us who were there played in everything. So I kind of felt like I was in my tuxedo like almost every night of the week. 'Cause I was playing in playing in wind ensemble, but I would end up playing on symphonic band concerts and concert band concerts, and same thing in the orchestra situation. Is just playing all the time, and with such great people. When I was in school there, I was able to do some adjunct teaching at Albion College, which was a really good thing. And I was also teaching at the National Music Camp at Interlochen in the summers. So I was getting a lot of good experience. I ended up after school getting a one-year position at the University of Arkansas. It's very frustrating. Everybody learns this. You get out of school, you want to try to get a job. They say, you're really pretty good, but you don't have enough experience. And the problem is, how can you get any more experience than you maybe have gotten? Because you just haven't had enough time. So that's always very frustrating. But a replacement kind of a position works out well for somebody that's coming out of school. People aren't wanting to leave a full-time position to do something like that most of the time, so the competition is not quite as fierce. So this particular thing, the band director moved up to act as department chair. The percussion teacher moved up to act as marching band director, and that created the slot for me to move in and teach percussion. Neither one of them, they both really kind of wanted that position, but the department chose someone else as chairman, so everything kind of scooted back down, which meant that I was back out on the street, which was why I ended up at West Point. So I did that for 3 years. It was also a really good experience, but it wasn't something that I wanted to maintain like as a career. So that's when I ended up sort of falling into the Austin Peay job.
Okay. Along the way, you mentioned Charlie Owen and some others. Do you have any other people who really influenced you on your musical journey?
Mr. Fink, that first teacher that I had, was a really good musician. And one of the things that he instilled in me was really searching out new music, things that he didn't know, just trying to sort of voraciously eat up everything that I could get my hands on. He left to move to another job after my sophomore year, and I decided to stay at Northeast and just go somewhere else for grad school. Alan Wotera is the person that came in after him, and that's kind of a hard thing to do if you to follow a really good teacher who's really loved, and you're going to try to fill those shoes is a pretty tough thing to do. So at that point, I didn't think he could do anything right. And as it turns out, he knew a whole lot more than I thought he did. I had written a piece for solo marimba, and Mr. Woltera said, "David, you need to try to get this published." And I was like, "I don't think so. Nobody wants to play something that I wrote." And he's like, "No, you're going to make a really," this is pre-computers, so everything was like,
there wasn't self-publishing or anything like that, or
well, there was. I guess there sort of always has been, but it was much more difficult, kind of pre-computer and pre-social media.
Sure.
Yeah. But you would make a good manuscript copy and make a good recording, so he helped me do all of that. We sent it off, and it was just a matter of weeks, I guess, really, even. And I get a note back that was Studio 4 at that point, and they're like, "We really like this piece and we want to publish it," which sort of started me on my path of doing some writing and arranging, which I might not have done. The other thing that he did was force me to play drum set in the big band, because I had really not done much in the way of drum set playing, and I absolutely did not want to do it. I was so angry at him for making me do it, but it got me over a hump of I can't do this. I still don't call myself really a drum set player, but I'm proficient. I can do things. I've made a lot of extra money, played various situations where I have had to sit at the drum set, and if Mr. Woltera had not done that for me, I probably wouldn't have done those things.
What motivates you today at this job you currently have? What inspires you to keep going?
I really like seeing the light bulb go on with a student. And again, although right now, and for the last maybe 3 or 4 years now, I've always had a student here or there who's really good and ends up being really successful. Eric Willie is a good example of that. He's really pretty high profile in the world of percussion now. And he was a person who spent some time at Austin Peay. But this period right now, I have more depth, top to bottom, of strong students than I've ever had. And the studio this semester is bigger than it has ever been. I've got 22 majors, which is, for Austin Peay, is too big, honestly. It's just, but it's it's kind of something.
Side note, I remember when there were 6 majors my freshman year.
Yeah.
So this is a big
difference. And I'll tell you, I didn't say this earlier on, but and this can be a hard thing sometimes. When I came in, there were a number of the students who were here who really they didn't really want to be in music. They just couldn't think of anything else to do. And when you didn't have somebody around all the time to try to help you.
You were the first full-time professor.
Right.
So
you didn't have, I kind of kept their nose to the grindstone. A number of them didn't really like that, and my numbers dropped. And I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but it's far enough. It's like the statute of limitations is over now.
Sure.
It literally went down to 1 student. And you should probably worry about your job at that point if that's what's going on. But in this particular situation, I guess it sort of had to happen so that you could turn the thing around and try to get it going in a good direction. Then, since you brought it up, the number when you were here, a smaller school like this, the numbers kind of have a natural fluctuation about them that I don't think that you can honestly really do anything about.
Mm-hmm.
Some years there are more people graduating from high school than others, more who are interested in music or not. And it's not like the big schools that have this many slots and have 4 or 5 or 10 times that number or whatever, trying to grab those slots. So you have more successful years and less successful years. But again, in the last almost 10 years now, I guess, it's been pretty steady at Austin Peay. And again, it's sort of gradually grown to this kind of, for us, a stupid number.
Yeah, all right. I like that you're getting into the trials and tribulations, which is the next part of this. You already talked about getting the job. Were there any oddities about getting the job? And you don't have to name names, but were there any moments that kind of shocked you about the application process? Or was there anything just, that was a little bit more of a challenge for you than you were expecting?
I'll tell you one funny story. There was, in the interview process, you sit down with all the music faculty. The thing is you don't know, you might, but in this situation, I really didn't know any of these people. And I had decided ahead of time that I wasn't going to try to answer the way that I thought they wanted me to answer, that I was going to try to be as straight up and honest as I could be, kind of with the idea, this way they're going to really know who I am. Mm-hmm. And either they want me and this is going to be a good thing, or I'm not who they want and I don't need to be here anyway. So the question that came where I thought, okay, well, here we go. This gentleman says, have you ever thought about starting a steel drum band? I think that would be a really great idea because they're really cool, And at this point, I had already done the master class with the students, so I knew how they played, and they did not play well. So I just said no. I would not start one. Based on what I've heard from the students, they need to study snare drum and sort of a basic 2 and 4 mallet kind of thing, and really get their fundamentals down because they don't have those things in line. So doing something else that is sort of ancillary like that, I think would be distracting from what they really need to do. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, either that was a great answer for all those other people and I'm going to be okay, or I've just shot myself in the foot. As it turned out, it was okay. He was a little bit of an outlier, I think, on the faculty, so it kind of worked out. But you don't ever know.
Yeah, right. So when you started working there, was there a moment where you started to feel at home, where it's like, okay, yeah, this is my thing? Like, was there ever a moment where that clicked for you?
I think I kind of did right out of the chute. I loved the faculty almost to a person. Great people, good teachers. Just, it was a great place to work. I also, I really liked the students, even though I had some that, were a little hard to work with.
Sure.
But I will tell you, this may not be quite what you're going for, but
hey, anything's good.
I had a real learning moment as a teacher. Like, I had some people who were juniors and seniors right when I got here that were not really qualified to be juniors or seniors. So, and I talk about this a lot of times, that sometimes I feel like I'm doing triage and the people that I'm working with have sucking chest wounds. It's like, you're not going to look and see if they need to get their teeth cleaned or something. You're just trying to keep them from dying on the table. So I think I approached lessons in that way, sort of frantically. I've got to get them up to speed before they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one student who was one of those older guys, we were having a lesson, and I was talking, and he stops me, and he says, "You don't ever say anything nice to us." He says, all you talk about is what's wrong. And you don't let us play. Like, we work on this and we bring it in here, and you stop us from playing almost as soon as we get started so that you can talk about what's wrong. And I was really offended at that initial moment. It's like, who do you think you are talking to me like this? But I tried to sort of stay calm and step back and think about it. And it was like, you know what? I think he's actually right. And so I really changed. I think I had probably taught that way most of the time, just like getting right to the heart of the matter. And I really changed my approach in a lesson so that even if it's pretty abysmal, the way that they're playing something, I will let them present what they have done for me, if it's at all possible, and try to find one little something that's good, so that the first thing that I can talk about is this little thing right here, and you really, really nailed this. And then I'll start to try to deal with what needs to be dealt with. And I talk about this all the time. I think I learn more in lessons almost every day than whoever the student is. Yeah. And I try to keep doing that.
So the thing that is kind of known about you in the faculty is the annual Halloween concert. And I'm just looking to the side. I see Halloween, paraphernalia already. And that's kind of been a big deal. It sells out concerts every year, with the exception of the COVID pandemic, obviously. But what was it like getting that off the ground? Did you have any people, kind of look at you funny? They're like, "You're going to do a Halloween concert?" What was it like starting that and continuing it to this day?
It was kind of hard. I mean, it isn't an original idea with me. The Michigan, the University Orchestra did the concert every year, and the audience actually all came in costume too. And that was, at that point, there may be tickets for it now, but the way you got into the concert was if you were wearing a costume. And I just thought, it was like, this is the coolest idea ever. I'm going to do this. And so when I started teaching, I pulled together some pieces that I thought might work, and so we did it. And again, things were pretty small when I started, and eight or something students on stage. That's kind of different. This year we've got 24 in the ensemble. But also people didn't know about it. And the thing that I did that was tragically wrong was that I did it on Halloween. So people that want to give out candy or protect their house or whatever it is that they want to do, it cut down on our audience substantially, and it didn't really occur to me. I think it was probably the first time that Halloween fell on a Sunday, maybe, that I put it on a different night, and the audience was massively different. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the way to do this. I promote it pretty hard. I always have. I go and I talk about doing commercials in music appreciation classes, public speaking classes.
I remember those.
I would go to all the music classes too, because some of the music students, especially the freshmen, transfer students, they don't know about it because they haven't seen one before. And just talk it up and try to get some excitement going. And of course, now I've done it long enough that people know it and expect it. So I worry every year, are we going to because we sell it out 2 times. So I want us to keep doing that. So I worry that, oh no, we're not going to do that. But it's been good in that way. I don't know.
Do you remember the first year it sold out?
Yeah, because it was almost a disaster. We didn't do tickets.
Oh.
And we did one show. And there was a crowd of people out in the foyer wanting to get into the concert and not able to, like mad, because they did not get in the concert. So we figured out that, well, for one thing, maybe we needed to do 2 concerts. We also needed to do tickets so we could kind of, have a handle on it. And also then hopefully people don't get mad if they didn't get their ticket. They can still be mad if they want to, but everybody has that opportunity to be able to come. And I don't even remember when we started doing 2 concerts, but it's probably, I don't know if it's been 20 years, but it's been a long time.
Do you still keep all the old programs?
Yeah, I've got them laying around. My office is a disaster.
There might be you might look at the time and just maybe see one of them, and then you can pinpoint exactly where you started doing 2 shows, because they started having 6 and 8 on them.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And you have a lot of pieces that you keep in rotation. How do you go about programming these concerts? Is it usually just, there's a movie out that's, spooky themes, so we'll do music from that? Or are you just sort of like, hey, I remember this old piece we did way back in '08, let's do that? Is there a combination of all those things?
Well, sometimes it's really weird. Like The Greatest Show came out.
Yeah.
And so we did a couple of tunes from that, and of course because we dress in costume, so my costume usually has something to do with the whatever. So it was that that kind of ringmaster look, and we did one where I was the Mad Hatter.
I still remember Maleficent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one, yeah, and so that's actually a really good one in that the whole reason, because Maleficent had just come out.
Yeah.
And of course, it was a huge movie, and the word itself, it just struck me funny that you could pronounce it Maleficent. And that's the whole reason that we did that year's Halloween like that, was so I could make that point.
It was all for a joke.
So it's funny how that goes.
Hey,
but the other thing too is that very often there are pieces on the program that you would go, why are you doing that? This year we're doing, and I've done it one time before, I don't remember if you were here, the Mahler, the Ehrlicht from...
Resurrection. I played that.
Yeah. And, most people would go, why is that on a Halloween concert? But it makes sense the way that I'll set it up so people will be convinced that it's okay for it to be on a Halloween concert. This time it's paired with the Queen of the Night. So there's sort of that good guy, bad guy, light and dark, that sort of thing. So I just enjoy doing things that don't fit.
Yeah.
And trick people into thinking that it actually works.
Yeah. In addition to teaching, you also play with the Nashville Symphony and you work with Row-Loff Productions. How did you get those gigs, and what was the process of getting all that?
Well, I'll tell you, it is sort of the how things almost always happen, and the initial part of that is who you know. It's kind of a terrible thing, but it's just true. So when I came to Austin Peay in '85, one of the first things I did was go to a symphony concert. The principal trumpet player had been the trumpet teacher at Tennessee Tech when we lived there. So I went to the stage door and got them to call him to the door. I just wanted to say hi. And so he immediately says, hey, let me get Harvey Warner over here to meet you. Harvey was the principal percussionist at that point. So this, and I don't know Harvey. I've never even heard of Harvey. Mm-hmm. And so he comes to the door and we talk a little bit. He wants to know, kind of what my background is. I explained that I'd been at Michigan and studied with Charlie Owen. Well, Charlie was in the Philadelphia Orchestra section with Alan Abel and Mickey Bookspan and all those guys. So Harvey was immediately like, man, we need to have you come play with the orchestra. So that was my foot in the door with the orchestra. Now, the second part of that is, and this is kind of the way it always is, I guess. If you do a good job, then you get called again. If you don't do a good job, you don't get called again. And that, I've seen that happen here, where, somebody sort of has that first opportunity to come in and play. They really don't do a good job, and they just don't get called. So, I was fortunate to be asked. I was lucky that I did a respectable job. So I was able to keep playing. So far, I think I've avoided sticking my foot in my mouth or whatever. Yeah. With Row-Loff, again, it was a who you know. Sam Bacco sort of got to know me because he was in the orchestra at that time. He's now the principal percussionist there. And we were playing some shows for Tennessee Repertory Theater. They did the Pirates of Penzance, the reworking of that, version, which has some ridiculous mallet parts in it. And so Sam was playing the timpani book and I was playing the mallet book. Chris and Chris, the Row-Loff guys, are starting to put this publishing company together. And what they want to do, which at that time was different than almost anyone else, was they were going to do live recordings of all the pieces that they're publishing so that you could listen to them. It seems everybody would go, what do you, everybody does that. Well, everybody does it now. And some of it's because Row-Loff did it. Mm-hmm. But they didn't know who to have come and play mallets. So they asked Sam, we need to have somebody come in and record these mallet parts. Who should we call? And the thing that was funny, they were playing, there's a band publishing company, both marching stuff and concerts. It's called the Rangers Publishing Company. And so for a few years, they knew me, but they knew me through this Rangers Publishing recordings. They both played snare drum, and I played tenors, which was also funny because I've never played. The only time I've ever played tenors is on a Rangers Publishing recording sessions. When I started with them, and they just didn't remember because it was so long ago, I was playing orchestra bells. They would record orchestra bells and xylophone. And the tenor player couldn't make it, didn't show up, whatever. So Jay Dawson says, David, you ever play tenors before? I go, no. He's go, well, you're going to play tenors today. So that was my introduction. I walk into this room and here's these tom-toms that are set up wrong. And I literally was about to take a wrench to them and make them be right until I really looked at the music and figured out I'm going to have to live with this because it's written for this setup.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is, Chris and Chris when Sam says you should have David come record your mallet stuff, they were like, he plays tenors, which again is hilarious because I don't.
Yeah.
I don't play tenors. So that was the start of our relationship, doing the recordings. And so once I started doing that, then they invited me to start doing some writing, arranging for them. And it's been great, man. It's 30 years. And I do at least one, sometimes 2 or 3 arrangements in a year for those guys. And their stuff is really popular. They have their niche. They aren't C. Allen publications or Tap Space. Everybody sort of has their own personality. But Row-Loff has done very well. And so, there are people all over everywhere playing things that I've arranged.
Many of the things I remember playing the first version at our Halloween concert, and then seeing it go up on the Row-Loff website.
Right.
So a lot of that stuff originated from that.
Right. Yeah, and they make fun of me too because it's like, oh man, you did another Halloween tune for us.
If it's not Halloween, it's Christmas.
Right.
So.
Right.
In your time at Austin Peay, can you think of any general highs or low points? And again, you don't have to name names. You don't have to feel obligated to say the lowest point of your career. But is there anything that comes to mind as a particularly great moment or a particularly challenging moment?
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about it a lot, but the Halloween concert, and then we also do a Christmas concert, which has kind of a different setup to it. But the percussion ensemble is involved in that one also. The 2 Halloweens and the Christmas concert up to this point have been sellout performances, and you don't get to do that a lot. Even when I go down and I play with Nashville Symphony, and it's so great. That orchestra is really, really great. But there may be a not really great audience for us, especially maybe a particular concert of music that doesn't seem to interest as many people or something. But there is something magic about having the hall be completely full and they're loving it and doing that performance. So I think even though the things that I do, the level of performance, like playing with Nashville, is so high, and our concerts are not that. But that feeling between that full house and the performers is, I feel so lucky that I've had it so many times, just year after year. Because an aside on that, the very same group doing a concert of not that particularly different literature in the spring, we're not wearing costumes and there are like 50 people in the audience. It's funny. Anyway, so I would say that's one of the real high points for me. As far as lows, it's been so long ago, I kind of don't, it's hard for me to remember it. But I was pretty concerned, I think, when my numbers had gone so south early on. Because I was working hard to try to make this be a good thing, and it seems like it's getting worse. Is all, it doesn't even seem like it's not getting better. So that was really hard. But to tell you the truth, the low moments didn't have anything to do with music. it was usually administration. And that include, I mean, I've been here long enough, I've seen a number of presidents, and we've had some really good, supportive of the arts presidents, and we've had some people that have tried to demolish the music department or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the same way at the dean's level, I'll back up, at the vice president / provost level, at the dean level, at the department chair. We have had the very best chairman that a department could ever have. And we have had the worst chair that a department could ever have. And I mean, in a way, for you in this class, this is probably really important information.
Sure, right.
You've got to deal with quite a few things when you work in higher education that don't have anything to do with what it is that you do. And the problem is, some people understand what it is we're trying to do. Music is the weirdest department, or what at college or whatever, at whatever situation you're at. People just do not understand what it is that we do. I mean, it's something as simple as if I'm teaching English and a student just doesn't get signed up for the class, I don't care because every other chair in the room is full, and it's fine. As a percussion teacher, I have somebody who doesn't get signed up for a lesson, and it affects my load. And the only person that's going to try to fix that is me, because nobody else cares.
Yeah.
You know, just the whole having to recruit. If you don't try to make sure that you've got students, odds are you aren't going to have students. That English teacher does not care. It's all those people that are majoring in everything else that are kind of their bread and butter, you know. And you don't think about those things, I think, when you're going through school.
Right.
And quite honestly, back to that point of having experience, the people that are hiring you know that you have all these other things to deal with. And somebody who has had some experience wading through the muck, along with the music stuff, is probably going to be, they're going to be a better fit than the one who's going to have to learn all that stuff in the first place. It's still terrible.
Yeah.
Trying to get that first job is so hard. So.
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, you started in the 80s. You came here in 1985, and you had some contemporaries audition alongside you, and you were kind of like trained to audition for a job in the 80s. What would you say is the biggest difference between a typical job candidate in that time period, your contemporaries, versus someone trying to get these jobs in the 2020s? What's the difference between that kind of candidate and a more modern candidate?
Yeah. I think it all has to do with computers. Seriously. You know, I'm kind of the crotchety old man there now. And all the things that we have to do that are computer based. And I mean, it's sitting right here. I know how to do what I know how to do, but there are a lot of things that I'm not particularly comfortable with. Like, I mean, this is stupid, but my phone is a phone.
Sure.
Maybe I'm gradually starting to use it in some other ways, but you know, at the end of the day, I've still got most of the time I've still got close to 90-something% of battery left because it lived in my pocket. You know, my wife is at 1 or 2%, like almost before breakfast is over. It's just, you know, it's kind of a different time. So you know, like having that social media presence is important. I mean, in that way, in one way, it's not different. You know, you've always had to promote yourself, and that's not something that I don't really care about it. So I'm not good at it, which is funny. I'm good at promoting the Halloween concert.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not good at promoting me. So it might be a little amazing that I even got a job in the first place. But and I'll tell you the other thing, there weren't nearly as many people trying to get the job in 1985. It's frightening what the competition is like now.
For a lot of, just in my case, for a lot of job openings, you know, there's like 50 applicants, all of them have DMAs.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, okay, then that's, you know, I've got a master's. I've joked for years and years that if I had to try to get my job right now, they wouldn't give it to me.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not qualified to have my job. Because that bar is so high. And now, I mean, the thing that's funny about that, you know, the kid that has gotten their undergraduate and went straight and got their master's and went straight and got their doctorate, they still don't have a lot of experience. I talk about this a lot. You aren't really taught how to teach. You're usually taught how to play. Now, if you're very aware, you watch how the person that is teaching you to play teaches. But if you're completely consumed with how you're playing, you're not really figuring out how to teach.
Yeah.
So people get into their position, and that's when they start learning how to be a teacher. And it takes a while. And you can't stop. That's another thing that, I mean, I think for Mr. Fink, I've been good about sort of promoting and letting my students come to me with music that I don't know. And I love that. Because otherwise I may have them do the same things that I've had other students do, because that's the stuff
That's what you know.
that I know. So I get to learn all the time. I get to learn all this new music that, you know, I learn it right along with that student. One of the students that I just had a couple of years ago, he brought me a piece that I did not know and I did not like, but I still let him play it. And I helped him put that piece together, you know, because that's kind of hard. Like if you hate something, and yet you still have to deal with it, you know.
Yeah.
And try to do that honestly as well as you can. That's sometimes a struggle, as opposed to something that you're really, you know, loving,
Sure.
and you really think is great. That's just your opinion.
Yeah. Do you feel that you have made contributions to the world of percussion? In what way?
Well, probably the biggest one is mostly the stuff that I've written for Row-Loff, because it has because they do such a good job of promotion it's kind of all over everywhere. Now, even like meditation and dance, it has had its moment as being a really popular piece. I mean, it was never, popular like Yellow After the Rain or
Sure.
Michael Burritt piece or Ivan Trevino now. It
Yeah.
wasn't that. But Robert Van Cise told me one time that he was in the area of sort of like Spain, Portugal, and his comment was, everybody over there at this point in their development, they all play meditation and dance. But to his knowledge, every time that he goes over there, he has only seen one legitimate copy of my piece.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is Xeroxed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I felt both good and bad about that. I hope that stuff helps people sort of along their little trek down the path that we're all running down.
Hey, love me.
And I think that maybe if it's another thing, and this is much smaller because it's just the people that were at Austin Peay, maybe sometimes to a fault, I am a teacher of music. I mean, it's in percussion,
Mm-hmm.
and I do deal with technical issues. But if you put it in some sort of percentage, I have a feeling that the technical things that I deal with, the percentage is very low compared to what I'm trying to give the student about the music. Because ultimately, this is just the way I describe it. We play music. We are musicians.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody says, "What do you do?" Well, I do technique. I'm a technician. You don't say that, but sometimes that is what we can tend to be if we're not careful.
Sure.
Not the point.
What advice do you have to anyone who may want to teach in higher education?
Be patient. Don't take the Dear John letters too seriously. I used to keep them all. When I was trying to get jobs, they always say something like, "We are so proud to announce that we have hired," fill in the blank, and that is not your name.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. And yet they send you that letter. It takes time. Just be as prepared as you can. Do everything that you can do in all the areas. I mean, the kind of playing that you do, the kind of teaching that you do. If you have the ability to write or arrange and do those kinds of things. I mean, again, when you're young, they'll still nail you for not having experience, but you can try to have as much experience as you can fit into your not very many years.
Mm-hmm.
And then just believe in yourself so that you can get something.
Yeah.
It just takes a little time.
Is there? Do you have a positive outlook for newer percussion teachers?
I have students doing things that I can't technically do now, which is the normal cycle of things for the most, especially when, I mean, we're essentially young.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like violin and piano, but I mean, even on those instruments, the younger people coming up end up, just because they learn everything and go a little further than that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that. A lot of the music that we have, what people are writing, what people are playing. Sometimes it seems to me that we're still, and this is also pretty normal, we're so wrapped up in the technicality
Mm-hmm.
of things that, again, we kind of forget that maybe we're supposed to be making music. As a result, a lot of times I hear people who don't move me when they play.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect their ability, but I wish for their musicianship to be more front and center.
There's only so many times you can hear Merlin and still be impressed by it, because you see it so many times.
So I guess that's what I would caution against.
Sure.
Is, and even like with teachers too, that don't get too wrapped up in just the making sure the permutation is correct, or
It doesn't need to be so technical. It's like, don't lose sight of the music. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I spend so much time like with tone,
Mm-hmm.
just because, again, people get wrapped up in just executing. And as a result, if that's really what you're thinking about, a lot of times you end up being pretty tight,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying so hard. I mean, it's not for a bad reason. It's a lot of times it's for a good reason, but your sound suffers.
So if you had to do all of it again, do it all over, is there anything you would do different?
Well, probably could have practiced more. I discovered not too long ago, and it's from a book. It's Row-Loff published it. It's a guy that had gone to Indiana, and it's got left-handed double lateral that goes from 2 to 1 over and over and over. It's in a triplet situation, and I can't do that. It's like I can do 1-2 all day long. My right hand, I can go 3-4, or I can go 4-3 all day long. My left hand, 2-1, I fall down miserably. It's embarrassing.
If it makes you feel any better, I struggle with that too. That is a difficult permutation.
Yeah. But I mean, just some things like that, because I think, and we all have a tendency to do this. Like, I think one reason I'm not good at that one, I never wrote anything really using that permutation.
Yeah.
And maybe because it was something that didn't feel natural to me. I didn't play anything that did that. And quite honestly, most of the time I rely to my right hand. If I'm gonna do something, all the work's in the right, my left's just kind of following along. I don't play snare drum nearly as well as I wish I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at a point I was a pretty good snare drummer, but I also kind of quit really keeping those chops together. So it gets frustrating when I have to do that and it doesn't sound like I want it to. Like I know I could. No, I should.
Yeah.
So I not only want to thank David Steinquest for doing this interview with me, but I genuinely want to express how, if it wasn't for him, I probably would not be a musician today. Back in high school, I didn't really have any formal music education. I was largely a self-taught drummer, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have any aspirations in life. But he saw my talents, encouraged me to come audition, and I was accepted into the program where I took in absolutely everything that I could. And if it wasn't for his honesty and his patience and his just amazing personability, I would not be where I am right now. I cannot stress enough that I don't know where my life would be in the year 2023 without David Steinquest. So I guess I just wanted to put this interview together and formally thank him, because I don't feel like I ever truly have, but I don't know where I'd be right now if it wasn't for him. So thank you so much, David Steinquest. If your legacy is carried on in all the students you've taught, then I suppose some of that burden falls now upon my shoulders, and I don't know if I could ever possibly measure up to that. So thank you. So to everyone still watching this video at the very end, I'd just like to say, keep doing it, keep believing in yourself, keep encouraging people. You never know who you might impact.